Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Policy Committee for the Halton Catholic District School Board for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. This meeting is being live streamed on our YouTube channel. Just a reminder for all participating in the call, if you could please use the chat box to signify your hand up as opposed to the hand up symbol so that we can keep order of speakers. We'll move to item 1.1, our opening prayer. Trustee Agnew. I'm going to talk through that.
Thank you. If you can join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear God, Father of heavenly lights, giver of perfect gifts, I give my children to you today and every day. Keep him or her and his or her schoolmates safe and protected. Father God, I ask this school year you would use every person, every experience, and every lesson to shape him or her into your image, to grow in his or her fruit of your spirit. God, grow in his or her heart. Teach him or her to sacrifice like you did, giving up what he or she values for the good of others. Bless the teachers and administrators, God. Keep them safe. These men and women who have committed to invest in the next generation. Give them discernment and wisdom to see each student's unique abilities and gifts. Multiply their preparation and may their plans be fruitful. Fill the day with moments of wonder. Remind them of their special place in the lives of their students and give them confidence in their abilities. And for all the parents and grandparents, Lord, I pray for peace. Give us plenty to do so we don't have time to fret. Let us be extraordinarily grateful for the privilege of parenting. Fill us with wisdom as we watch our babies grow. Grant us patience and kindness as they stretch their wings. Hold us close to you as we learn to let them go. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Trustee Agnew. Moving on to item 2.1, approval of the agenda. Trustee Agnew.
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough to get to my notes here to put my hand up. I'd like to make a motion to add an agenda item under item 5, discussion.
Okay, what is that title?
It's titled Trustee Code of Conduct Procedure.
Okay, thank you. That'll go under 5.1 under discussions. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Duart.
Trustee Duart, seconded by?
Murphy.
Trustee Murphy. Anybody opposed? Okay. Agenda is approved. Moving on to item 2.2, approval of the minutes of June 9th, 2020. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Duart.
Trustee Duart, seconded by?
Murphy.
Trustee Murphy. Anyone opposed? Minutes approved. Under item 3, any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, action items 4.1, policy I-19, occupational health and safety, Superintendent O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, the report before you is an annual report, which again, on the Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 25J, requires that the board prepare and review at least annually an occupational health and safety policy, and further that once this has been approved, that it be posted in a conspicuous place in all workplaces. Staff has reviewed the policy, and other than making a date change, we are looking at getting this approved without any major changes. So happy to answer any questions that trustees may have.
Thank you, Superintendent O'Hara. We'll start with Trustee O'Brien. You have the floor.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Superintendent O'Hara. This policy, I really do feel it is very, very complete in many, many ways. I took a look at the Occupational Health and Safety Act this afternoon, and I can see how much we are in compliance with it. And I'm thinking of this policy in terms of this year and all the new procedures that we have put in place for COVID-19. And I just thought maybe we could look at it a little deeper instead of just passing it right to the board without changing. And I'm looking at bullet number 4 under requirements. And the reason I'm bringing this up because I really think we're doing this already. And I just thought, let me read it for the bullet. It says supervisors at all levels are responsible to ensure that machinery, equipment, and work methods are safe and that workers, employees perform their duties in compliance with legislation and establish safe work practices and procedures. And since COVID is more of a health issue than a safe issue, so I was wondering if we could maybe just input the word after safe, 2 words, and healthy, just to kind of keep in line with what we're doing anyway. And again, I'm just saying that we are doing all these practices. I know our practices are supposed to follow the policy, but since we're already doing these practices, why not just let the policy follow these good practices? Thank you, Mrs. Chair, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee O'Brien, can you just, under what bullet did you want to add that on?
Under bullet 4 under requirements.
Okay. Supervisors at all levels are responsible to ensure that machinery, equipment, and work methods, is that the bullet?
Correct.
Work methods are safe and that workers, employees, their duty in compliance with legislation and establish safe work practices and procedures.
And after the last safe, I was thinking if we put the word and healthy, just an idea I'd like to throw out to the trustees.
Okay, I'm just from my looking at it, and maybe Superintendent O'Hara can look at it. I don't know that healthy fits in that bullet. I understand what you're trying to get at, like what your point is in regards to that, but I don't know that that's the appropriate spot for it, because this makes reference to machinery, equipment, and methods.
Okay, thank you. Do you see a better place for it? I mean, I'm open for discussion here, and more eyes, the better for me.
So if you look at the next bullet, it said supervisor shall advise a worker employee of the existence of any potential or actual danger to the health and safety to the worker employee of which the supervisor is aware. So if you go through it, there's a couple of spots, and then the second bullet under that, it says it makes reference again to health and safety. And then if you look at the bullet, I don't know if you can see my mouse here. No, you probably can't.
I can.
Okay, you can. The one where it starts with workers/employees are required to report immediately unsafe or unhealthy situations to their immediate supervisor or designate. So I think it's consistently throughout this. I just think the spot that you've picked doesn't really go. But is that what you're looking at? Because it does say health and safety in all the other bullets, actually.
Well, I was just thinking of making it more consistent. And going back to that bullet, another place we could put it, I couldn't really actually decide. There's the word safe is mentioned twice there under equipment. Again, I was wondering if we could put the word healthy after the first safe and healthy. Bullet 4 under requirements.
Under requirements. So supervisors at all levels are responsible to ensure that machinery. So we're back to that bullet. That's where you're thinking of.
That's where I'm thinking. Sure.
Okay, maybe Superintendent O'Hara, like your thoughts. For me, Trustee O'Brien, I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but I just don't see that it flows in that point.
Again, through the chair, I would agree that that particular bullet is really focusing on machinery and equipment and work methods, and so the healthy aspects are covered off under several of the other bullets. So I'm not sure it really goes there, but I'm in your hands.
Trustee O'Brien, can we maybe go on to another trustee and ask them to weigh in on it as well, as they have some questions? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, and I can come back to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Trustee Dewart, you have the floor.
Sure, Madam Chair. Question to Joe. Sorry, I forget the name for a second. The title. have you looked at this policy with respect to the COVID situation that we have? I know it's a generic policy right now. So have you looked at it with the lens of the pandemic that we are? And are we sure that we are geared up for any kind of situation like this in future?
Thank you for that question. And again, through the chair, yes, we did go and look at this in terms of dealing with COVID. Our view of it is that COVID is just one of thousands of risks that are out there in the work world, and it was felt that we should be keeping this as a generic to cover off again all of the types of risks and hazards that may exist today or that certainly could come up tomorrow. And so we have had other significant events that have come and gone, and we don't mention them in the policy. It is a general policy which covers off health and safety and requires the employer to take all precautions reasonable to protect the worker. And so these statements, a lot of these statements come right out of the Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Officer Joe O'Hara. I'm sorry I forgot a title just when I first asked the question.
Do you have a follow-up question, Trustee Duart?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Agnew, you have the floor.
For you, Madam Chair, and this might be a question for Mr. O'Hara. I'm just curious, do we have a joint health and safety committee at the board?
Again, through the chair, we run a site-based joint health and safety committee. So rather than having one committee, we actually have a health and safety committee at each work location. That comes out of a Ministry of Labor order that came about, I believe, in 2001. There was at one time a central committee that was found to not meet the legislation, and we were ordered to set up a site-based committee. So that's the history of that particular issue.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do have a follow-up. So each, when you say location, then each work location, so that would be each school, and then the CEC would also have one, correct? And so, okay, thank you. So we weren't following legislation then by having one, we had to have multiple, but then there was also a reason why we couldn't still have the overarching joint health and safety committee, or?
So the legislation says that you're supposed to have site-based committees, and only if you get special permission can you close out site-based committees and have a one general committee. In order to do that, you need all of the parties to be in agreement to having a joint health and safety committee. Back in 2001, again, there was a joint health and safety committee. There was a complaint that was put forward by the Uecta Secondary Unit, who wanted to have their own committee just of secondary. So the ministry came in, took a look at it, and ordered the site-based. There has been a lot of advantages to having site-based committees, and it is considered to be certainly a superior option. That allows for there to be many trained worker and employer reps throughout our system, and being able to be proactive at each local level to make sure that health and safety issues are being addressed.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. So I'm just wondering if it would be covered, the fact that we've improved our ventilators because of the pandemic. Is that covered under any of the bullets?
Through maybe Director Daly. I think that was part of the ministry mandate for the COVID orders, correct? Doesn't that fall under its own?
Through you, Madam Chair. So any additional measures that we've taken, say in the last 6 months, with regard to either ministry direction or funding that we've had from the ministry, we've taken those actions because of that direction. The policy that's before you is essentially the overarching policy that governs occupational health and safety. And in that sense, it really hasn't changed. Certainly in the here and now, we're dealing with our COVID situation. But as Superintendent O'Hara mentioned, there could be any number of occupational health and safety issues that we could be asked to consider or deal with over the course of the year. So the fact that we've taken a particular action wouldn't make it part of the policy. We take the action because we have the responsibility to ensure the best worker safety that we can.
Thank you. So it's covered. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee Carabello?
No, thank you.
Okay. Trustee O'Brien?
Okay, thank you through Madam Chair. Madam Chair, since you brought up that point, I've reflected on your ideas about that not being the right bullet, and I'm wondering if maybe you're right. I picked the wrong bullet. I'm looking at the bullet. Supervisors, this is actually, let me give you the number so you're all on the same page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th bullet down. Supervisors shall take every reasonable precaution for the protection of workers / employees. I wonder if we could put health and safety after that. Just to be more specific. And again, I'm thinking of this being a year where health is so much on our forefronts of our minds.
And to what end? Sure, we can talk to Superintendent O'Hara, but and maybe he can correct. I think this is directly out of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. This is actually our requirements as mandated by the Act. So the policy conforms with that. So you're looking to add, supervisor shall take every reasonable precaution for the protection of workers / employees.
I took a look at the Act this afternoon, and I think that addition would only really make us more in sync with the Act than less.
Okay, so let's.
So I'd like to make a motion. We add those 2 words.
Okay.
3 words. And
so protection of protection and health and safety of workers / employees.
I know for the protection of workers / employees, health and safety. I just think it would fit better. The very end of the bullet.
The very end. Okay. Does anybody have any objection to this?
Or I don't have a seconder, but I just throw it out there.
Well, it's not really a motion at this point. It's an amendment, and if everybody's okay with it, we don't need a motion to. Joe's got, Superintendent O'Hara has no concerns with adding that. Okay. Does anybody have any concern? Okay. We'll add those changes. Is there any other questions in regards to this policy? Thank you, Trustee O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have anything else or a follow-up?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. So can I get a motion to accept policy I-19 as presented?
I'll move it.
Trustee Agnew, seconded by Trustee Dewart. Is anybody opposed? Okay. So we will present policy I-19, occupational health and safety, to the September 15th board meeting. Moving on to item 4.2, policy III-05, employee assault. Superintendent O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. This is a general policy on employee assaults, and it covers all kinds of assaults, including sexual assaults, assault with a weapon, anything that falls under the criminal code. We certainly have taken a look at this. We believe that the policy, other than making some minor housekeeping changes to the dates, should remain status quo. Happy to answer any questions that trustees may have.
Thank you, Superintendent O'Hara. Is there any questions? Okay, can I get a motion to present policy III-05, employee assault, to the September 15th board meeting?
I'll move it.
Trustee Agnew. Can I get a seconder?
Murphy.
Trustee Murphy. Anyone opposed? Seeing as no one's opposed, policy III-05 will be brought to the September 15th board meeting for approval. Moving on to item 4.3, policy III-15, workplace violence. Superintendent O'Hara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. The Occupational Health and Safety Act does state that school boards are required to review annually and revise, if necessary, a policy on workplace violence. Staff have reviewed our policy, and apart from a few minor date changes, we are suggesting that it be approved as is.
Thank you, Superintendent O'Hara. Can I get a motion? Oh, okay. So I'm going to get the motion on the floor first, and then we'll open it up for conversation or for discussion. Can I get a motion to move policy III-15, workplace violence?
Duart.
Trustee Duart, seconded by?
I'll second.
Agnew. And Trustee Duart, you have the floor. Trustee Duart?
I was muted. So to Executive Officer Joe, question here is, we discuss as a board and we agree on this policy. How do we disseminate this with the principals, teachers, and staff? Do we talk to them every year as a requirement?
Superintendent O'Hara, do you want to take that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. This would be a policy which we would be presenting every year to principals to review with their staff. We also, new employees, when they're onboarded, would be provided with copies of our policies. In particular, the workplace violence policy and the next policy on workplace discrimination and harassment are annual policies that are required to be looked at and passed. So yes, these would be reviewed with staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Duart. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you. I got bumped out of the meeting. I'm back, and I hope I didn't miss anything. Just for this particular policy, I was wondering, do we get any reporting on this in camera or about that? How many assaults we had, or if we had any assaults at the board? Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Superintendent O'Hara, do you have, or Director Daly? Superintendent O'Hara, sorry.
I just want to make sure that I've got that question. Is that question coming to me or the director?
It's coming to you, Superintendent O'Hara. The question that Trustee Carabella has is any reports of workplace violence, do they come to the board?
Thank you. And again, through the chair, it would really depend on a case-by-case basis what the issue would be. Obviously, if it was a situation that warranted and became a very public.
Superintendent O'Hara, we lost you there. You're muted.
I'm sorry about that. I've been talking to myself. So it would really depend on the individual circumstance. There is issues around privacy of certain situations. So, this certainly deals with things like domestic violence and threats, etc. So depending on what the circumstances would be, if it was something that, obviously was a very public issue, we would be going and bringing updates to trustees. In general terms, we would not. We would be dealing with the employee and their union, and we wouldn't be bringing specific reports to the board.
Thank you, Superintendent O'Hara. Trustee Carabella, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I guess that's a bit follow-up would be then, like, how do we know that the policy is being effective? But as trustees, the policy comes to us, but we don't have any sort of feedback to see if there's any gaps or something.
So just, and Superintendent O'Hara can speak to it, this is actually mandated, this is legislated, all of these policies are required that we have a policy in a place by law. So maybe Superintendent O'Hara can speak more to that. So if there isn't, there would be grievances, obviously, that could be filed that would quote legislation, not only violation of our policies, but of legislation under workplace violence and harassment. Superintendent Harrell, do you want to maybe further elaborate on that?
Certainly, and through you. So the basis of this particular policy and the requirement to have one came out of a very sad situation that occurred in Windsor, Ontario, where a nurse was being harassed by a former person that she had a relationship with at work. He was a doctor, and he eventually did kill her. And so in the whole investigation, they felt that certainly the ministry felt that the employer hadn't done a number of things to go and make sure that this particular person was safe. And so that's the impetus of it. So, again, dealing with workplace violence, domestic violence, we would be required to create safety plans for individual employees if it came to our attention that they were in a domestic violent situation, and do whatever we can to go and make sure that they were safe at work, and certainly safe leaving work. And so a lot of it comes down to what the particular situation is. It could be something as significant as making sure that someone is being escorted to their vehicles at the end of the day, to transferring them to a different location, to making sure that their names isn't being published publicly, so that their former relationship person could not track them down, etc. So that's the basis of it. And as I've indicated, it really many times is issue with us working with the employee, the union, and trying to keep the issue confidential and private. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. No further follow-up.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Carabella. And thank you, Superintendent O'Hara. Seeing there's no more questions, do we have anybody opposed to the policy as recommended? Seeing as nobody's opposed, we will bring this policy to the September 15th, 2020 meeting for final approval. Moving on to item 5, discussion items under 5.1, policy II-40, bullying prevention and intervention. Oh, I missed 4.4. See, I'm ahead of myself because I checked it off already. Policy III-16, workplace discrimination and harassment. I apologize. We're still on action items. Superintendent O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. This is, again, an annual policy which we are required under the Occupational Health and Safety Act to bring forward and to review. It covers off both the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Ontario Human Rights Code in terms of ensuring that we have a workplace free from harassment from any of the protected, prohibited grounds under the Human Rights Code. So certainly we have reviewed this policy, and apart from some minor housekeeping changes on dates, are asking that it be approved as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent O'Hara. Can I get a motion to open up the discussion on this, on policy II-16?
Duart.
Trustee Duart. Can I get a seconder?
O'Brien.
Trustee O'Brien. Is there any discussion on this policy as presented? Trustee Duart, you have the floor.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just looking at this policy, which is workplace harassment. It also talks about discrimination here. In what way does this discrimination apply to hiring practices? Is it addressed in this policy, or is it a different policy which we look at?
Thank you for your question, Trustee Duart. Superintendent O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Discrimination based on hiring is a prohibited ground under the Human Rights Code. That is covered off under our hiring policies, where it cites that. This is certainly a more general policy, which actually went through a major rewrite last year, where we combined a few policies together to produce what you have before you. So again, this did go through a fairly significant rewrite last year, and certainly we did go and work with a number of individuals, including our legal counsel, to have this reworded for you. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Duart. Do you have a follow-up?
No, thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there any other questions in regards to this policy? Okay, seeing none, do we have anybody opposed to policy II-16 as presented?
Through you, Madam Chair, point of clarification, wasn't this policy 315?
No, this is policy III-16 under item 4.4.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask again, is there any opposition? Is there anybody opposed to this policy? Okay, the policy will be brought forward to the September 15th, 2020 board meeting for final approval. Now we can move on to item 5.1, policy II-40, bullying prevention and intervention. This was briefly discussed at the last policy meeting to be brought back to the September policy meeting for I guess an ad hoc committee is how and Director Daly is going to, I guess, speak to it.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, trustees may recall in May when we looked at the bullying prevention and intervention policy that there were a few questions around the policy at that time, and that staff had indicated that we were hoping for or anticipating some additional directives coming from the ministry with regards to bullying prevention. At the time, there was a fair amount of public statements made around bullying and bullying prevention. We've not yet received a whole lot of additional information yet. We did focus for part of one of the PA days on bullying prevention and intervention, our PA days last week, but it was a bit of a part of an umbrella package. So while we have got a little bit of additional information from the ministry, it hasn't come in much detail yet. All that being said, I don't think there's any reason why we can't strike this working committee to at least get it together. We can review the current policy, review some best practices that we have in place now, and then address any questions we might have going forward. I think we were looking at bringing it back to policy for November to update the policy. So I guess I would suggest that I'll canvass trustees through the chair to see who might be interested in this particular working group. And it would be a combination of staff and some trustee representatives, and we can get started on it.
Thank you, thank you, Director Daly. So Trustee Dewar, you have a question?
Through Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask Director Daly, what would be the scope of this? Is it just coming up with a policy? Is it coming up with something that we are practically going to implement in schools? Is it so what's the scope of this bullying prevention policy that we're talking about?
Trustee Dewar, if you're okay, I'm going to answer that because I actually was the one who brought it to the table. I handed the gavel back in May to discuss this, to have a working group, just because of some of the concerns that had come up in some of the incidences, to see if we can't work together in regards to almost preventative or working in advance of the policy coming up in coming to a goal of I guess, bettering our policy, if that makes any sense. So it may be that there's no change that comes out of it, or maybe there's some betters that can come out of it. But it was just for us as trustees in bringing that parent and experience to the revision of the policy in advance. Does that make sense?
Okay, but is it going to flow down as something concrete happening in schools? Some kind of a programming or something we're talking about, some change in,
well, it's the overarching policy. There's still a procedure, right? That's more overarching. So that would be something that would work in conjunction with the policy. But the step that we would have governance over, which is the policy piece and input into the procedure, but really essentially it's for us to work with staff in revising this policy in advance of it coming for review in November.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Agnew?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Would the intention be here to also include our SEAC and our CPIC groups to have a say or participate at all?
It's a working committee. I think it's at our will. We, I think if we ask Director Daly to include those groups, I think, and he's giving us a thumbs up, so that's
okay.
So that's, and I think what we should do though is that I think maybe we should look at limiting the number of people, because if we have all 9 trustees and then potentially CPIC and SEAC are large committees, I think maybe 1 to 2 representatives.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we could. I think we could certainly manage that for sure. And it's sort of the same thing, is determine maybe 1 or 2 reps, put it out to see who's interested. Because I mean, I can't speak to CPIC. I'm not intimately involved with that committee, but I know from a SEAC perspective, bullying is obviously a huge concern for that special population, and I think they would love to have some sort of input in that. So that would be great if we could consider that. So thank you for that.
I think that's, Director Daly?
Just food for thought, and please take this in the way it's intended. We're more than happy to, obviously, it's a trustee motion and a desire for trustees to play a part in the committee. Once we add 9 trustees to a committee, it immediately gets fairly big. So I think when we originally talked about it, we talked about staff representation, trustee representation, and now some other groups. So I'm not sure I don't want to say we don't need 9 trustees. That's not the way I want to say it. But like I said, that right off the bat, that makes it a fairly large committee.
I don't disagree with you. And that definitely wasn't my intention, for it to become a committee of 25 people. Ideally, it was to create a smaller working group outside of this policy group. Ideally, because it comes back here for further discussion. So thank you for that point, Director Daly. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. If I remember back to June, that it was a working staff committee that we were going to form. I'd be interested to be on it as well. I can see how it would be good to have SEAC and CPIC. representation. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so great, thank you, Trustee Carabella. So maybe at this point, if we establish some parameters around that working committee, set numbers. First off, can we get any interest on who, and you can just put your hand up in the box for trustees that would be interested in joining the working group? I'll give everybody a second. Trustee Dewart, is that a hand up or is that an interest?
Interest, Madam Chair.
Okay, so that's Trustee Dewart, Trustee Carabella. Trustee O'Brien, is that a hand up or is that you're interested?
I'm interested. I wouldn't mind just thinking a little bit more about it, but I'm really leaning towards it. Thanks.
Okay, so can we put you as a maybe?
Strong maybe.
Okay. Okay, and I'm interested as well. So then that would be gracious through withdrawal. Always so gracious, Trustee Murphy. So that would be 3 with a possible 4th maybe, which I think is probably manageable. Director Daly, that would be a fairly easy working group, I think. And then do we want to say 1 representative with an alternate for SEAC and CPIC?
Sure.
Does that work? Trustee Agnew, I'm gonna defer to you because you're on SEAC.
You know what, can I get back to you on that? Let me get a flavor for what that looks like. The only reason I say that is that I know we have a lot of different groups that are represented on SEAC. So I think I'm just looking to make sure that we have different lenses reflected.
So if we did 2 and 2, that would still only lead us to 8 max without staff. Director Daly, do you think?
Well, I mean, it could be, and again, not to dissuade greater representation, but it might be SEAC and CPIC where the SEAC rep brings it to SEAC.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
They kind of kick it around
Yeah.
and offer suggestions.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's do 1. We'll do 1 and 1 alternate so that we make sure that if they're not able to attend, as you suggested, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Yep. Trustee Carabella?
It's funny, my thought left me now, what I had to say. Sorry, thank you.
That's okay. Okay, so looks like we have 3 trustees with a possible 4th maybe.
Well, through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I just remembered. Director Daly, this is to Director Daly. Would these meetings right now be virtual meetings through Teams?
Thank you. I think all of our meetings right now will continue to be virtual meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that, or do you have a follow-up, Trustee Carabella, or is that it?
That was the question. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll have 3 trustees with a possible 4th, which is a maybe. And for SEAC and CPIC, we'll have 1 with 1 alternate. So for a total of 5 committee members, not including staff.
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions in regards to this, or can we move on to the next piece? All right. Oh, is that an okay number? So Director Daly says that that's an okay number. He's going to work with it. He's not going to. He's okay. Does that answer your question, Trustee Dewart? Okay. So moving on to item 5.2. This was the item added at the agenda, Trustee Code of Conduct Procedure. Trustee Agnew.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to get feedback from my fellow trustees that we currently do have a policy and a bylaw that speak to the trustee code of conduct, but we do not have a procedure attached to that. And so I wondered if there was any will of my fellow trustees or any desire for us to take a look at creating a procedure to accompany that policy and bylaw. So really that was sort of the intent of the discussion this evening, to see if anybody had anything that they wanted to add to that.
Thank you, Trustee Agnew. I'm going to, Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Trustee Agnew, for bringing this up. I'm thinking back when we did look at our code of conduct briefly a while ago, and that very question was brought up, especially in regards to bullet. I'm going to say page 9 at the very bottom where it says. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just pulling this out now because I'm just, okay, I'm sorry, page 8 at the bottom where it says a trustee who has reasonable grounds to believe that another trustee has breached this code of conduct may bring the alleged breach to the attention of the board. I'm glad you brought this up, Trustee Agnew, because when we looked at it before, we talked about how we do not have a way to do that. I mean, do you just throw it out at a meeting? I don't think so. Is it in camera? So I would be very much in favor of coming up with some kind of procedure, especially around that piece. I mean, there's lots more to the code of conduct, so I would, yes, be in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Trustee Duart, you have the floor.
I have withdrawn, but I'd be in favor of a procedure.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Duart. Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. I was going to echo what Trustee O'Brien said. I remember that we were discussing like how to go about. So we seem to have, once the issue is brought to the board, but we have a way of dealing with it, but how do we bring it to the board? That was one point. And would they be following, like, are there municipal guidelines? Are we following some sort of procedures that are already in place in other organizations or?
So Trustee Carabella, the Education Act talks about conduct, and then our Trustee Code of Conduct and Governance touch on it. However, other boards have adopted procedures, because although you have a policy, that's one thing, but if you don't have a procedure on how to deal with any concerns, then it's kind of left to the will of the board. So I have seen that a lot of boards have actually taken up procedures in regards to code of conduct that coincide with the policy.
So a follow-up to that, Madam Chair, could be that we maybe see a few of those procedures so that we have a springboard, to sort of go from there.
Trustee Agnew, do you have some procedures?
I do, actually. I'd be happy to share the ones that I have so far. And if anybody else has any, or they can research any of them, I think that'd be great. So yes, I'm happy to share those as a starting point.
Do you have a follow-up to that, Trustee Carabella?
Yes, I do. Also, generally, like our procedures so far have always been put together by Director Daly and the staff, saying that they're operational. And so I'm just wondering what he has to say to that, about what the process from the senior staff view is to these procedures.
Sorry, hold on.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Trustee Carabella. I think I think a procedure to support a policy should come from senior staff. Certainly with input with trustees, because it does deal with trustees. But yeah, I'm not sure the trustees should be setting the policy and the procedural element. I think that's something we could work on together.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, Director Daly. So just to follow up, would the staff be able to do that, to do like start the process?
I think Director Daly is nodding. I think I think he's going to follow our lead. If this is what we want, then he would. I think his words were he would work with us. Staff would do it with our input. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So moving on to Trustee O'Hearn-Zernota, you have the floor.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. First, I want to say that hopefully we'll never ever have to use this in my term as a trustee. I just wanted to make a comment. Second of all, I just wanted to reiterate and confirm, Trustee Agnew, that it's really just getting a standard operating procedure that would guide, in the circumstance if we ever had one, as to how we would bring it to resolve. Is that correct? Just adding some steps so there's no gray area left?
Absolutely. So that's absolutely it. My intent behind it is just that if like you said, we hope that that never happens, in our term. But in the event that it does, and in the event that there is, a code of conduct issue that is brought forward, is, so we're not left scrambling, so we're not trying to figure things out as we go and make assumptions or try to figure it out, that in the event that we ever needed that, like any other procedure we have to go with a policy, that we would have a procedure to follow. So that was the pure intent behind it.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee O'Hearn-Zernalta?
I do not.
Okay. Moving on to Trustee Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think it's important to have procedures, again, as Director Daly had pointed out, that are not developed by the trustees. It's challenging enough with this code of conduct because there is no adjudicating body that oversees trustees, and we're self-policing. So I think if you really look at it with a critical eye to this policy, there's a lot of pitfalls that I think we need to tighten up, and I look forward to having those discussions.
Thank you. I agree with that, Trustee Murphy. Did you have any other comments or questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor. Trustee DeRosa, are you there?
I am. I didn't unmute myself. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I would support this initiative, and because it would be good to have the guidelines in place. I'm just curious, in the past, I don't know whether the code of conduct has been enacted in the past or not, but that if it has, what process did we follow then, if any at all?
I'm sorry, is that a question?
It's a question. It's just a
question
point
for Director Daly. I'm not sure that he would be able to answer that because he had a very short period prior to.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Trustee DeRosa, it hasn't been invoked since I've been director, so I certainly can't speak to our last 2 years, but that's something that I could take a look at in terms of what past practice has been.
Just as a means of guiding us in the future in whatever we develop. That's all. That's my only point. It would be good to see what past practice has been.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions, Trustee DeRosa?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Dewart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to piggyback on what Trustee Murphy said, it's kind of a self-policing kind of procedure there. And again, trustees noticed that we're adding a few steps there. So I'm just throwing it out there. Do we really need to look at a procedure, or can we add those extra steps into the policy and make the policy more detailed, and with all the information that we have? I'm just throwing it out there. Do we need to have a separate procedure, or can we make the policy as detailed as possible?
Thank you. Through Trustee Dewart. So what I've seen, and I don't know, Trustee Agnew, what you've seen, but I've seen where there's ones that have policies that are similar to ours, boards that have policies that are similar to ours, and then there's others that have just as of recently been adopting procedures to go further. And just because the procedures go into more of the investigation piece of it, that it doesn't form part of the policy.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I think Trustee Duarte brought up a good suggestion. We could tweak the policy so that the procedure is sort of in there. Another thing, I think we do need to set a timeline on this, only because it has been up in the air since we came together as a group, and to put closure on an actual way to bring things to the board, I think would give us all peace, so we're not wondering. Thank you.
So here's my thought. So Trustee Agnew has brought it forward as a procedure. Do we want to start with having staff working on a procedure with our input and then see if that can actually stand alone or if it makes more sense to put it inside the policy. Would that be something that people would be agreeable to? Trustee Duart and Trustee O'Brien?
I'm open to both ideas. Just threw out my thoughts there. So whatever the trustees, all of us collectively think, I'm okay with that.
I'm just thinking from, sorry, Trustee O'Brien?
I'm open to that. I just would like the trustees to get a final look at it to approve whatever the staff does.
And I think that's what Director Daly had stated was if they would, just to come from it from a procedural lens and obviously with our input.
Thank you.
Trustee Carabella?
Yes, thank you. I think you summed it up as well. I did wanted to acknowledge the suggestion of Trustee Duarte, and that maybe that's right with Director Daly and the staff can come up with something and see whether it's enough to just add it to the policy or if it's standalone. So I appreciate that wrap up. Thank you.
So sorry, Director Daly?
Sorry, I was just looking, I apologize. I was looking at my screen here and I thought I saw Trustee Antomasi typing. I know he's on the call, but doesn't have audio from his end. It just came up that he was typing something, and so I don't know whether he was trying to type a message or not. Sorry about that.
He did, okay. So, so are we all okay then with having staff? I don't see anything in the box. So are we okay then with having staff start with a procedure and then we'll review it to see if whether it should be a standalone procedure or move it to the policy?
Yeah.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, sorry.
Okay, so, sorry, Trustee Duart, yes?
I think Trustee Antomasi just sent a message here. He's having some problem, I think so. Should be added to the bylaws as an addendum to the Code of Conduct section. I don't know what he means by this, but.
So I think we start, okay, so I think there's a consensus for us to start it as a procedure. The bylaws are still under review. I see this as something separate because the trustee code of conduct is on its own. It's an actual policy on its own. It's not in the bylaws. It talks about it in the bylaws, but it's an actual policy as well. So, so what Trustee Agnew has brought forward is actually a procedure to go in hand with the policy. So I guess, so Trustee O'Brien, are you okay with this approach?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Trustee Murphy, are you okay with this approach?
Yeah, yes, I am. Sorry, couldn't find my mouse.
That's okay. Trustee Duart, are you okay with this approach?
Yes.
Trustee DeRosa, are you okay with this approach?
I'm okay with the approach.
Trustee O'Hearn-Zernota, are you okay with this approach?
All good, yep.
Trustee Agnew?
Yes, all good?
And Trustee Carabella, I think you already said all good, but just to confirm.
Thank you. And I did just have a comment just to just loop back to the bylaws. There is quite a bit of the trustee code of conduct in the bylaws. So one might help to inform the other. So just to keep that.
Absolutely. And that being said, we have to go back to the bylaw review anyways. So that's on the table. So I think whatever policy happens, then it'll reflect whatever changes we make in our bylaws when we deal with that working group.
Thank you.
No problem. Trustee Antomasi, can you type in the box? Are you okay with that? Well, we do have a consensus, but I'm hoping I'm not good. Bylaws drive policy, not the other way around. Okay, so I'm okay with this approach because it's procedural. And then if need to, it can go into the policy, which will then obviously amend our bylaws, because I'm assuming that if we're all in agreement with changing the policy, we would be agreement to changing it in the bylaws to reflect whatever we agree in the policy. So, so Director Daly, we'll leave that to you. And we wanted to set a timeline to this, the first meeting in November. Is that fair? Because it's a new policy. And that gives us an opportunity to bring it in as a discussion item in the meeting in October.
Well, it's through you, Madam Chair, just a point of clarification. It's a new procedure, not a new policy.
Right, but it may affect the policy, right? It could potentially,
Right.
that's what
Yeah.
we just,
That's right.
right. So it'll come as an information item first, and if it stays at the meeting in October, is that enough time for you? Or at least a draft of it?
Yeah, that was my question, Madam Chair.
Okay, at least a draft. And if Director Daly, if because of everything that's going on, if there's any issue with it, I think we can all agree that we can push it to the November meeting. Are we all good with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, all right. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Agnew. Thank you, Director Daly. Thank you, everybody, for your cooperation on that. Moving on to item 6, information items. These are all information items. These are our procedures that go in hand. The 1.6.1 goes in hand with our action items. Trustee O'Brien, you have a question? You have the
Yes,
floor?
thank you through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent O'Hara regarding procedure II 16 on harassment. Superintendent O'Hara, it says in this procedure, if it is determined that the respondent's behavior did constitute harassment. I'll say it again, this is the phrase is if it is determined that the respondent's behavior did constitute harassment. And then it gives a consequence. Who determines and how is it determined whether or not a alleged harassment has taken place? Can you just talk to that, please?
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Superintendent O'Hara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, there certainly would be an investigation that would take place. It would either be taking place through human resources, or in some cases, it does get assigned to someone from outside the organization. They would write a report to the Director of Education, and then we would certainly go from there. So the determination of whether there's harassment or not generally would fall to human resources, certainly in consideration, and also checking with our legal counsel throughout.
Okay, a follow-up, Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Superintendent O'Hara, would that be one person in human resources that would determine that? Would it be a tribunal? Like, who would do that? Would it be yourself? Like, I'm just wondering.
So generally, we have a manager of employee relations and myself, and we deal with harassment complaints. In some circumstances, the director may also assign a superintendent to assist in that investigation, or in some cases, based on recommendations from myself, the director may choose to have a third party investigate the harassment situation.
Okay, and just one more follow-up, Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. There's nobody else in the queue, so.
Because if I'm not mistaken, in the public board, if a harassment allegation has been decided, has taken place, if I'm not mistaken, the person who has been accused or alleged, after a year can request, and I'm going to outline the word request, that report be taken out of their file. We don't have that policy, do we? Superintendent O'Hara.
Again, through the chair, no, we do not have a policy saying that a harassment complaint can be taken out of file or destroyed after a period of time. There is language.
I want to make it clear, I didn't say take it out, I said requested.
Requested?
Yes.
There is some language in some of our collective agreements that says if an individual sort of takes issue with something that's in their file, they can request to have it removed. So in general terms, I would say no, other than a situation where it was found to be disciplinary and there being a sunset clause in a collective agreement, we would keep records of it all. Thank you.
Okay, but that is still there, correct? Any employee can request that, correct?
Any employee can request consideration on any disciplinary finding and look at trying to get it removed. And I'll give you a bit of an example for trustees' information. There was a situation where we had an employee that had done something inappropriate early in their career. Fast forward 25 years later, just before retirement, put a request in to ask if that could be removed from their file, that there was no other issues, and it just bothered them that they were retiring with that still in the file. After some consultation, we agreed to remove it from the record.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent O'Hara, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien and Superintendent O'Hara. Then we have the 6.2 is our upcoming agenda items for October 13th, 2020 meeting. Moves us to item 7.1, Policy Committee Work Plan. Director Daly, I'll hand that over to you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The work plan for this upcoming year is attached. I believe, and I apologize for not being completely up to speed on this, but I believe by the end of this year, we will have completed our 3-year cycle of all our policies. We did have a couple from last year that got deferred, so they've been included. And as always, it's a bit of a working document.
Thank you, Director Daly. And item 7.2 is also your item, which is the Policy Working Group Committee members. That's the bylaw. It's Policy Working Group Committee members.
Can you just
Scroll up.
Is it just whoever's on it?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're asking for participation?
Or it's who's on it? Did it change?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Just give us 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Director Daly.
Sorry for the delay there, folks. So the Policy Working Group Committee members, that's the staff, the principal group that we have that works on policy. Haven't updated that committee quite yet because we're hopeful that shortly we will have a new superintendent in place that'll be in charge of policy. If that doesn't happen soon, I'll certainly update that myself.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 8, in camera, there's no need for us to go back into or go into camera. Item 9, we don't have any absent committee members. And our item 10, motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Agnew.
Trustee Agnew, seconded by?
O'Brien.
Carabella?
Trustee O'Brien beat you, Trustee Carabella.
No problem.
Trustee DeRosa, could you lead us in our closing prayer, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please join me in the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. O Lord, you who promised to give us through, to guide us through this wilderness and to protect us through the storm, we ask that you would make us wise when we cannot clearly see the way forward. Make us brave when we feel afraid. Make us strong when we face our weaknesses. And make possible to us what seems impossible. So what we might joyfully entrust ourselves and our children into your tender care in these trying and troubling times. In Jesus' name, amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week, a blessed week, and best of luck to everybody. Hope it's safe and uneventful.
Thank you,
You
Nancy.
too.